Right.
and that other family members supposed to be living in the house that he was registered to, and I think that was a challenge. All right, thank
Right.
you for your call. Let me get as many in as I can. Let me go to Dennis in Georgia. Dennis, line 4.
Hey, Reverend Al, I really enjoy your show. I've been telling everybody to watch it at 6 o'clock here in Augusta.
Thank you.
And what I wanted to emphasize, I think I'm right, that Newt Gingrich's real name, birth name, was Newton Leroy McPherson.
Mm.
And I want to check that out, and if I'm right, stop calling him Newt Gingrich and start calling him Newton Leroy McPherson, just like you do Willard Minton Romney. I think you need to do an update on that. And I enjoy your show, and I'll let you go ahead and get somebody else. But it's Newton.
All right, thank you. And let me thank all of you that participated today. Let me encourage you to watch Politics Nation with Al Sharpton live on MSNBC at 6 p.m. Remember, whatever you do, wherever you go, however you feel, tell somebody. Reverend Al told you personally, keep it real. Keep it real. Keep it real. Keep it real. Talking to you on Monday. Keep it real.
The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast are not necessarily those of WGCV 620 AM, its staff or management, or our parent company, Glory Communications Incorporated.
Get ready. Armstrong Williams is up next on WGCV 620 AM, where knowledge is power.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Hi, I want to report a bear sighting.
Location?
My front door.
Oh, really? And did the bear knock or use the doorbell?
He used the doorbell. It was Smokey Bear.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah, my husband was burning leaves in the yard. He just came inside for a second.
Not a good idea.
Smokey said the same thing. He said to never leave a fire unattended because it could lead to a wildfire.
Yeah, but if it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave.
Smokey said that too.
We go way back. I knew him when he was just a cub.
Oh, how cute.
Rangers are many things, ma'am, but cute isn't one of them. Have a nice day. If you see someone in danger of starting a wildfire, step in and make a difference. Because 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
So much to learn. There's so much going on.
This is Al Sharpton. I'm keeping it real on WGCV 620 AM, KC, Columbia, where knowledge is
all
power.
the guests she's scheduled because it's pulled from my calendar. I can see it in
My name is Tom Thornton.
And my name is Cindy Thornton. We've been married 38 years. We're retired, and this is how we live united.
Only the calendar.
We play golf and we travel, but we also decided we were going to give to and volunteer with United Way at our community free health clinic.
I do the nursing at the clinic.
I work the front office, checking in patients, greeting them, making them feel comfortable.
United Way is how we contribute, because we know our time and money are going to the right places, the places that need it most and implement it best.
Judging by the thank yous we get at the clinic, I'd say we're doing the right thing with our retirement too.
We even get a few bless yous. It's incredible.
We're Tom and Cindy Thornton. We volunteer at our community free health clinic, so we don't just wear the shirt.
We live it.
Give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Go to liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Oh, I received that. That's the same thing.
Opinion, debate, conversation. Only on WGCV, KC, Columbia, 620 AM, where knowledge is power.
Hello, everyone. This is Armstrong Williams on the right side. Don't curse, speak English. Armstrong Society. I dare you to listen.
Hey, turn it up. Hey, Armstrong, get on the right side. Armstrong,
elevate your mind.
Armstrong,
I'm Armstrong Williams on the right side.
Yo, man, it's your boy KO. And you're tuned in to the most conservative of our brothers.
The Armstrong Williams Show. Please give me a break. Grow up.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Armstrong Williams Show. Thank you so much for joining us. I don't know if you followed the story in New York, how New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg has banned churches from using school buildings and facilities to hold their services. You know, I don't know how much you know about the history of churches in this country. Early on, for churches, even before they had their own buildings and properties, they used schoolyards during the early years of our country to hold their worship and faith services. And it became such a tradition in this country. And also, churches pay substantial dollars for the use of these facilities, particularly in New York, where they have these budget shortfalls. The churches contribute strongly in the fact that they use these classrooms to hold their services. And you'd be shocked at how many churches actually use the classroom, because many of them don't have their own institutions. So it was just shocking that Mayor Bloomberg would just ban churches from using the school ground. What's even more shocking is how he bent over backwards during the debate over the museum to let Muslims do whatever they wanted to do, build wherever they wanted to build without question. And I can imagine if this was a mosque that he would even think about offending the Muslims. You know, I was thinking about what Newt Gingrich said last night during the presidential debate. There's just this onslaught against the Christian faith. I mean, the just disrespect and the dissing of Christians and their faith is unbelievable. And Bloomberg, I mean, where he got such a strong contingent of his support, what was he thinking? I mean, what harm can churches bring to a school? The school is not in session. They use it during off hours. They take care of the properties. They've never been an issue. And all of a sudden, he wants to ban all churches from using the school ground. And listen, I know they're saying this is not going to spill over to other government buildings, but many people think this is his ultimate goal, that churches don't use any government property because of this issue, this ridiculous issue of the separation of church and state. Our guest, Alan Reinach, is joining us to talk about Mayor Bloomberg banning churches from meeting in public schools in New York City. Alan, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Hey, I'm delighted to be with you.
I mean, listen, you heard my opinion. It just doesn't make any sense. What? No harm, no foul.
You know, Armstrong, I have to say it's a more complex issue, although I agree with much of what you said. Let me start by at least correcting a couple of factual issues, because the issue started long before Mayor Bloomberg ever came into office. The case that was filed by the Bronx Household of Faith started 16 years ago, and this issue of the New York City Board of Education wanting to banish the churches from using the public schools, goes back 16 years. So it's true that Bloomberg at this point is certainly not using his influence to change the policy, and there are a number of leading city council members and et cetera who are getting behind this issue. So I'm not trying to whitewash Bloomberg to any extent, but it's also a more complicated legal issue.
Help us understand the legalese in all this, Alan.
I'd be delighted, because that's really where my expertise is. The city of New York, their position is that when you have community churches conducting worship week in and week out in the local public school, that it creates this kind of public image of a union of church and state, where the prominent public institution in that community is essentially seen as in partnership with and endorsing that local community church. And that under the Establishment Clause, which respects the independence of church and state, that kind of symbolic union sends the wrong kind of message. And, there's certainly some merit in that. The problem is that by now excluding the churches, they send an even stronger message that the churches really are unwelcome and undesirable institutions in our communities.
Listen, you cannot... Listen, I don't see how you can see that and make an argument of the separation of church and state in this debate, because this is a long-held tradition of our country. It's not as if this started ages ago. I mean, 2 clauses of the First Amendment concerning the relationship of government to religion, the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause, Alan.
Right.
And although clauses were included by the framers to serve common values, there is some tension between the two. For example, some people might suggest that providing a military chaplain for troops stationed overseas violates the Establishment Clause, and while others might suggest that failing to provide a chaplain violates the Free Exercise Clause rights of the same troops. We will, however, postpone discussion of how the 2 clauses ought to be reconciled and begin with an examination of the meaning of what the Establishment Clause is. So I really don't understand. Even if you use the Establishment Clause of the Constitution as your legal boundary.
Well, you're right that there is that tension, and that tension is right here because you have these churches that are serving the community, that are part of the community, and by excluding them, in a city like New York where there are limited spaces available, it really does impose a burden on the free exercise of religion. And the problem, of course, is be one thing if the school said, we're not renting or allowing any outside groups to come in. They have the right to do that. But once they say, we're going to allow outside groups to come in, they really have to treat them all even-handedly. And the argument that was made in this case was that it was viewpoint discrimination to exclude the churches while allowing other kinds of groups to come in.
Let me tell you, and I just keep going back, and just help us with this. Listen, here's what I don't understand. Proponents of a narrow, how do I want to phrase this so you can, let's say proponents of a narrow interpretation of the clause, what they try to do is point out that the same first Congress that proposed the Bill of Rights also opened its legislative day with prayer and voted to apportion federal dollars to establish Christian missions in the Indian lands. And on the other hand, persons seeing a far broader meaning in the clause point to the writings of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, suggesting the need to establish a well of separation between church and state. There's always a contradiction, and the Supreme Court never got involved until 1947 in the first interpretation of the Establishment Clause in Everson versus the Board of Education.
I've spent a long time as a historian and a constitutional lawyer looking at these issues of the original intent of the framers. And the problem, of course, is that it's not that they were hypocrites, it's that, the political realities often produced results that were inconsistent with the principles. And probably the greatest example was the 3/5 compromise, where African Americans were counted as 3/5 of a human being for purposes of congressional representation, and obviously inconsistent with the idea that we were, all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. I mean, it was an inconsistency that ultimately wasn't resolved without an enormous amount of bloodshed in the Civil War. So the fact that the early Congress didn't always apply the principles. Madison was very clear that congressional chaplains, that prayer and such was a violation of the Establishment Clause. Jefferson was clear as well. There were those who understood these principles, but in a very highly Protestant culture, we've had this very strong blending of religion and government, what the scholars call civil religion, that's been part of our American tradition.
Listen, it's interesting that you decided to bring up the 3/5 compromise, because even there, to me, are clearly distortions of what that really meant. It did not mean that, and correct me because you're the historian, that black Americans were 3/5. It was put in place, and of course we don't agree with it. It was in order to satisfy the southern slave holding states on the issue of determining population for representation in the national government. And so the northern non-slave holding state didn't want slaves to count as a whole person, or the population in the South would just be too much. So the southern states wanted slaves to be counted. So the compromise was that 5 slaves would count as 3 people.
Right.
Even that is misinterpreted today, because many people will say, well, we were only counted as 3/5 in the Constitution. I said, no, that is not true. It was a political negotiation by the South to achieve more voting power in the national legislature. That's what it was. We're going to come back. Where did the time go? We'll be back. We're going to get back into this issue of church versus state, whether or not churches should not have the right to use school rooms and school grounds for their worship service. I'm Armstrong Williams. We'll be back with our guest, Alan Reinach. Don't go away.
Armstrong Williams returns in a moment.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based living. At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
Make good nutrition and physical activity part of your family's daily lifestyle. Be our guest to healthy living and visit letsmove.gov to learn more. Brought to you by Let's Move, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Ad Council.
To travelers along the road of life who have fallen asleep at the wheel, to the many who woke up in time to avert disaster and get back on the righteous path. For the ones who crashed and survived and now adhere vigilantly to a virtuous and righteous path. Finally, Armstrong Williams' much-anticipated new book, Reawakening Virtues, gives his insights into these daily challenges and much more. Reawakening Virtues is available in bookstores and at Amazon.com. For more information on the Armstrong Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
If you have a question or comment for today's Armstrong Williams Show, call 733-5620. That's 733-5620. Call and be a part of today's Armstrong Williams Show on 620 AM, where knowledge is power.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
Churches that have been meeting in public schools in the city of New York in recent years will now have to find a new place to worship, according to a decision by a New York Circuit Court on an appeal to let churches stay. The decision was prompted by the New York Department of Education, which has sought for many years to have churches removed from their schools, even if the churches in question only met on Sundays when the schools were closed to students. The controversy in New York has opened up a rather complex can of worms in the ongoing battle between free speech and separation of church and state. Why would the mayor inject himself in this volatile debate?
Well, I'm not sure how much the mayor himself has injected into the debate, but he's being pressured by clergy, by church members, by city council members to override the long-standing policy of the Board of Education. You know, I want to come back though to the issue of the Establishment Clause, because there's a very interesting wiggle room here. The court did not rule that the Establishment Clause requires the policy, that the policy is required by the separation of church and state, and it's entirely possible that the courts would rule that the policy is simply not required, and therefore that the city is perfectly permissible in allowing the churches to be there. And there's state legislation now that's been introduced that would override the policy of the Board of Education. So that's where the battleground is going to shift politically, away from the courts and to the legislature.
So this is about freedom of religion now in the Establishment Clause.
Well, look, properly understood, the Establishment Clause and the separation of church and state are a protection for religious freedom, not a barrier against religious freedom. Unfortunately, not everybody has valued religious freedom, and so they twist it into some kind of club to be used against religion.
But you know, again, and I think it's just a play on words here. The Establishment Clause was intended to prevent any government endorsement or support of religion, while one might intuitively read this to mean that the clause was meant to preclude endorsement or support of some particular religion. It is important to note, Alan, that the clause also prohibits the endorsement of religion generally over non-religion.
Well, that's true. Look, there's to me there's two core principles in our First Amendment dealing with religion. One is that religion is voluntary, and that the government stays out of it. You know, that's really the basic premise. And the other is, you know, it's simply not the religion's not the business of government. So government has to be even-handed. It can't start playing favorites or determining what is truth or which groups are acceptable and which are not.
How do they resolve this issue? Where do you think it's going?
I suspect that, well, there's going to be a good push in the New York State legislature. Is the same legislature that enacted same-sex marriage last year going to stand up and protect the churches in New York City?
Yes.
You know, I'm a New Yorker, born and raised, but I've been here in California. I've been out of New York for almost 20 years. I'm not going to call this one. I think it's going to be close.
Let me tell you the problem here. It's not a principled position for politicians. They do what is politically expedient. If this were a principled position, yes, one thing. But it's an election year, and they're not going to offend a strong core support system of the Democratic Party. They're just not going to do it.
Well, you know, that's interesting because, I mean, both parties obviously have made their effort to appeal to religious constituencies. Within the Republican Party, certainly their core religious constituency tends to be white, and within the Democratic Party tends to be African American and other ethnic groups. So certainly, you know, you've got 3 million blacks in Brooklyn, for example, something like that. The demographics would suggest that the Democrats really should pay attention to this issue because, you know, it is often minority churches that are the ones, the newer churches, congregations formed, that are property shy. And there's literally something like 60-plus churches now that will be homeless pretty soon when this policy goes into effect February 12th.
You know, the churches are really up in arms over this issue in New York.
As they should be.
We have not talked about the impact this is going to have on those churches. Talk about that.
Well, look, I think one of the things that people don't really focus on is how much the churches serve the communities. We're in an era where there have been massive cutbacks in public funding for all kinds of services, and who steps into the breach? It's the local churches that are in the communities, that are working with the homeless, that are working with, the youth, with the addicts, with the gangs, that are doing all of the things that need to be done in the community. And if you kick them out, and it's going to have an enormous impact on the very positive influence that these churches provide, the services that they provide in the local community.
What are the churches to do in the meantime so they don't get caught up in this political and jousting crossfire?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, they're going to be homeless, and who knows how they're going to struggle to survive. I had a client here in California that was evicted from their home as a church, and it destroyed the church.
Wow. I just I don't know. It seems as though Bloomberg's getting all the blame, though.
Well, obviously, it's convenient to focus on the mayor, and he certainly has power to do something. As I've looked at the press reports, I haven't seen where he has been publicly engaged, speaking out either against, in defense of the policy, or saying he would do anything about it. I think he's trying to keep a low profile, it seems to me.
If this were an election year where he was seeking re-election, I doubt this issue would have ever come to the public domain at this time. And if it had it, he literally would have taken a political position aside with the ministers. It would have been very easy for him.
Well, and look, the timing has to do with the decision from the Second Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. I was surprised. I mean, I've known about this case for years, and we'd been winning. Bronx Household of Faith, which is the name of the little church that was suing, they had won previous rounds, and they'd been meeting for all these years. I thought the case was over a long time ago, and was surprised when I found out that no, and in fact, they lost, and then the Supreme Court declined in December to hear the case, leaving the decision standing.
Why do you think the Supreme Court decided not to hear the case?
Trying to second-guess the court is a dangerous job because they take such a small percentage of the cases that come before it. They do tend to take religion cases a lot more often, but it's really hard to say. I mean, the short answer is they didn't have 4 votes in favor of taking it. But why they didn't have 4 votes, it may be because they don't see this as enough of a national issue or an issue where there's enough of a conflict around the country. Yeah, but, there's really no way to know.
What are we missing in this debate that we've not discussed, Alan?
That's a wonderful question. And I think what we really need to understand is that both religion clauses need to be interpreted to promote religious freedom, and that when you have a result like this that is going to kick 60 or more churches out of their homes in the city of New York, where real estate is at a premium, where they just don't have anywhere else to go. And if your concern is we don't want the public thinking that we're somehow endorsing these churches, then great. Put up a sign and say, we're not endorsing these churches. We let everybody come and meet on the same terms. There's other ways to solve these problems without having these knockdown, drag-out fights over these issues in the courts.
I agree with you. Full disclosure. That's what we all do. For full disclosure, the organization and WGCV does not necessarily embrace or share the views of our hosts. They're his own. But we will let him have the space. Simple. And sometimes simple things become so difficult for bureaucracy, Alan.
That's right. And people get, conflicts develop, and people develop entrenched positions, and they can't break out of, their position and find common ground.
And then people get so caught up in their faith, they're saying, my God, we're saving souls, we're saving the communities, we're making a difference, and you're going to shut the doors on us and you allow these other organizations to thrive that brings no redeeming value to our communities? What is going on in the world?
Well said.
You can hear that rallying cry. Listen, tell our audience, how can we learn more about you?
Well, our organization is the Church State Council, based in Southern California for almost 50 years. Our website is churchstate.org, churchstate.org, and advocating for religious liberty for all.
Well, listen, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us and be a part of this conversation, and we look forward to having you back with an update.
Hey, I'd be delighted.
Thank you, Alan. Daniel Weber will be joining us to talk about AMHC. It's a senior organization. It's growing fast as a conservative alternative to AARP. We're going to learn more about it here on the airwaves and get your thoughts on it. Have you participate? I'm Armstrong Williams. We'll be back.
Armstrong Williams returns in a moment.
Anderson Brothers Bank, a family-owned and operated establishment that blends traditional personal service, local market awareness, and advanced technology to meet the financial needs of its customers. Visit abbank.com or call 843-464-6271 to see how they can assist you with your banking needs. Anderson Brothers Bank, celebrating 75 years of community banking, the way it should be. Stability right in your backyard since 1933. Join the millions of Americans who pursue one of our country's finest traditions, from hunting to sport shooting. Since 1871, the NRA has grown as a service organization involved in all aspects of shooting sports and is a proud defender of the Bill of Rights. Join today to begin taking advantage of exclusive membership offers and discounts, including up to $25,000 in insurance coverage. Contact the NRA today. Call 1-800-672-3888 or visit nra.org.
Just tell me what you think is fair.
What are you doing?
Filling out a loan application.
I can help you get approved, you know.
Really? How?
With this.
A bag of sand?
It's not a bag, it's a pouch. And it's not sand, it's credit fairy dust.
Credit fairy dust?
Yes, I sprinkle some fairy dust on the application, and your credit rating magically improves.
There's no such thing as the credit fairy.
An unbeliever now. But what will you think when your loan is approved?
I'll think my credit score improved because I paid my bills on time, kept my credit card balances low, and only opened a new card if I really needed it.
It's the dust.
It's sand.
Don't deny the credit fairy.
There's no magic to improving your credit, but there is help, and it's free. Go to creditfairy.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the Consumer Bankers Foundation, the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights Education Fund, and the Ad Council.
John Bennett was paralyzed by a sniper's bullet in Iraq.
It shattered 2 vertebrae and fractured another one.
What? Paralyzed Veterans of America helped John get all the benefits he earned. To help paralyzed veterans, visit pva.org, a public service of Paralyzed Veterans of America.
If you have a question or comment for today's Armstrong Williams Show, call 733-5620. That's 733-5620. Call and be a part of today's Armstrong Williams Show on 620 AM, where knowledge is power.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong Williams.
And welcome back to the Armstrong Williams Show, and thank you so much for joining us. I was just a little surprised that some of our lay members that listen to the show did not call in to offer their input and perspective on the fact that New York is setting precedent for the rest of the country by telling churches they must pack it up and leave because they no longer can use church. They have their church services in school classrooms. It's just, to me, unprecedented. It's just, it is. You know, you best believe what happens in New York and a place like Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles eventually trickles down to the rest of our nation. So you should watch this very carefully because there are many churches throughout the South that use schoolrooms for their church services, especially on weekends, because they cannot necessarily afford to build their own institution, the church institution, from ground up. So this is an issue that you should definitely watch closely. Daniel Weber, AMAC, the fastest growing alternative to AARP. Why do you call it the conservative alternative? And welcome to the show.
Great to talk to you, Armstrong. Well, the people that believe, like we do, in old-fashioned American values of faith, family, and individual freedom, AARP lately, in the last 15 years or so, has gotten away from that. And now we think the conservatives want a place to go that's going to really represent them in Washington, especially for Americans age 50 and older.
What makes you so different?
Well, we actually take action. Our actions are louder than words. One of them is Social Security reform. AARP talks about it but hasn't done anything. We've got a real live proposal before the Hill now that we're talking to congressmen and senators. It looks like it's got a reasonable chance of getting voted on at some point. AARP hasn't really done anything. That's one difference, but I can go way back. One of the reasons, Armstrong, that I started AARP, a competitor, which is AMAC, was because they had an article on spiritualism for seniors. So I said, oh, this ought to be good. And I opened up the magazine, I read about it, and you know what it was? It was about crystals and laying on a table and having crystals placed on your belly button and having aroma candles burn and all this kind of stuff. And I said, that's not spiritualism. At the end of the article, they mentioned something that was revealing, and it said, oh, for those traditional religious folks, there's always Billy Graham.
You're kidding me. Wow,
I'm
offensive.
not kidding you. I'm not kidding. I was in their magazine.
Oh, my goodness.
And that was about 6-7 years ago. And ever since then, there's a lot of little things like that have been happening. And I realized, hey, wait a minute. These guys have changed. You know, they're not like they used to be 50 years ago when they started. And we need an alternative.
Now, AMAC describes itself as defending the traditional values of faith, family, and individual freedom. It's calling for its members to, you want to cancel the Bill Maher TV show.
Yeah, we think what he did, you know, there was a time when I guess the levels of decency in America were a much higher standard. And you have a guy like Bill Maher, very popular guy, you know, and he is funny at times, no arguing about that. But he actually said that Jesus, and he used the F word, talking about Tim Tebow, when Tebow's team lost, because Tebow, as you know, kneels down and says a short prayer thanking God for the victory. Probably he's thanking that he didn't get hurt. But anyway, so Bill Maher used the F word with the word Jesus in front of it, and I thought that was a new low. And, you know, years ago, a person would have been fired for it. I think that person should be fired for it now. There's got to be a line, and Bill Maher definitely crossed the line. And if somebody out there doesn't start speaking up, then nobody will, and our kids are going to go down, 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 down in our society with it.
Let's talk about some of the issues. Talk about the payroll tax cut debate.
Oh, well, that's a great one. The Republicans got schnookered, in our opinion. You know, they went along, first of all, with cutting Social Security 2% of the roughly, 6%. So they cut Social Security, and it was supposed to give, working people stimulus, the extra 2%. Well, first of all, we represent senior citizens. They never should have taken it out of Social Security. They should have taken it out of the general fund. So the Republicans got schnookered, because now, if they go to change that, then they're going to be accused of having a tax increase. Well, AMAC has a proposal, and we say, hey, what you got to do is restore Social Security. Don't cut Social Security 2% like they did. That's idiotic. Social Security's in trouble. So what they should do is they should negotiate a 3% tax cut for every wage earner, not from Social Security, but from everybody's basic pay. But the people earning $300,000 a year or more, they wouldn't get the 3% tax cut. Okay, just the people who earn under $300,000. That way, the Democrats can win. They got their tax on the wealthy. The Republicans win because they save Social Security, and everybody wins because instead of a 2% tax cut for 98% of the workers, they get a 3% tax cut. So that's the kind of thing that AMAC stands for. We want positive, intelligent, common sense alternatives.
So, I tell you, there are people that argue that extending the Social Security payroll tax cut is essential to promoting economic vigor. But you argued, but doing so is not without significant cost and consequence. You feel for the first time ever in the history of Social Security, roughly $110 billion from the U.S. Treasury will be transferred to the Social Security Trust Fund to finance the first payroll tax cut from 2011.
Exactly right.
That is significant.
It is. They've got to take this so-called stimulus off of the back of Social Security. If you're going to stimulate, fine, but don't take the money out of the Social Security funds. That is like insane. First of all, 2010, Social Security came up $49 billion short. We paid out $49 billion more from Social Security fund than the fund collected. Now, we have a surplus, but guess what? Surplus is running out. By the next generation that's going to collect, they're going to have to cut Social Security 25%. And I tell people, don't believe me, look it up on the Internet. By at least the 2030s, maybe earlier, the benefits automatically, because of a trigger in the way that Social Security is funded, when the money's not there, you have to cut the benefits. So all people on Social Security, whenever we reach that point, are going to get a 25% cut in their Social Security income check. And that would be horrible.
So even beyond the limited temporary reduction in taxes, there's really no reason to let the Social Security tax cut expire?
As far as I can spend probably all day with you. We got to let the tax money get put back into Social Security. They should have hands off for Social Security, number one. And like I said, if the purpose was stimulus, then have a 3% tax cut across the board of regular people's pay, everybody. That would actually do a much better job of stimulating the economy than this one. It's the basic thing. Do you want to keep your financial house in order or not?
But what if you never had a financial house to keep in order and didn't understand what that means? Especially when you're spending somebody else's money.
Well, you said it. You said it, Armstrong.
How do you address that? Because you talk about the growing support for substantial and responsible reform. You say, in fact, the 250,000 member Association of Mature Americans recently conducted a poll on this very issue when asked whether members thought the Social Security tax should be extended. 95% of the 2,000 respondents said eliminate the break. Clearly, your members are worried that repeatedly passing last-minute economic bans aid should not trump the sovereignty of Social Security.
That's exactly right. And you know what? People seem to forget that American citizens aren't that dumb. They know what's going to. Common sense. Hey, they know we're running shortages, so we say, hey, you can't cut these things. You got to restore that. And so most of our workers, most of our members are workers, and most of those, 95%, said we're willing to give up this phony 2% cut because we'd rather have Social Security sound than give ourselves a little con job and say, oh, we got plenty of money, when we don't.
So you're saying we're broke?
Well, not quite yet. We're heading that way.
Are we 2 years away from that?
Well, it all depends how you look at whether we're broke or not. Do you know how much cash reserve is in the Social Security fund?
Tell us.
Almost nothing.
Yes, I feel it was about zilch.
Yep. You know what's in the Social Security fund? IOUs.
Yeah. I guess when we come back, we've got to discuss the key question remains, will Congress and the administration follow the path of Imperial Japan and swap long-term stability for convenient political gain? And or will they truly do what is needed for the enduring interests of the country? And that's exactly what they're doing. They're not making the tough decisions. They're making the quick fix decisions, and it's going to be hunting to us.
Well, you're all right on.
Hunting. I mean, and who will pay the price? Future generations will pay the price. And somebody needs to stop kicking the bucket down the road, and somebody needs to say, hey, if it costs me my job, whatever, I'm going to do what's right. It doesn't matter whether I get political brownie points. There's too much at stake. We'll be back with our very special guest, Daniel Weber, the founder of AMAC, a fast-growing alternative to AARP. We'll be back.
Armstrong Williams returns in a moment.
The Armstrong-Williams Show.
Join us on Monday for the Armstrong-Williams Show when our guests will be members of Congress. Join us for a lively discussion right here on WGCV 620 AM.
Where knowledge is power.
High Point University has experienced unprecedented growth during the worst economic disruption in decades. This growth is driven by a university that focuses on holistic education, on experiential learning, and on values-based.
And how much would that be?
At High Point University, every student receives an extraordinary education in an inspiring environment with caring people. See what makes High Point University extraordinary at highpoint.edu.
To travelers along the road of life who have fallen asleep at the wheel, to the many who woke up in time to avert disaster and get back on the righteous path. For the ones who crashed and survived and now adhere vigilantly to a virtuous and righteous path. Finally, Armstrong Williams' much anticipated new book, Reawakening Virtues, gives his insights into these daily challenges and much more. Reawakening Virtues is available in bookstores and at Amazon.com. For more information on the Armstrong-Williams Show, please visit our new website at www.rightsidewire.com. There you can find his syndicated column archive, view live streams, and get your favorite conservative pundits' views on the current issues affecting the American people. From building wealth to foreign policy, stay connected with Armstrong-Williams and his colleagues at the all-new www.rightsidewire.com.
Madison Davis.
Renovations in homes built before 1978 can spread lead paint dust that's harmful to children. Don't let lead paint take away your child's future. For a lead-safe certified contractor in your area, call 1-800-424-LEAD.
If you have a question or comment for today's Armstrong-Williams Show, call 733-5620. That's 733-5620. Call and be a part of today's Armstrong-Williams Show on 620 AM, where knowledge is power.
Where heads of state, sports, entertainment, and political celebrities meet. You're listening to Armstrong-Williams.
How did you start? Our guest is Daniel Weber. What did it take to start your organization, AMAC?
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, Armstrong. There was a couple of other organizations that said they were senior alternatives to AARP, so I joined them, and I never got anything from them other than a couple of offers to buy insurance. They didn't have a magazine like AMAC does. They didn't have any people really on Capitol Hill that were lobbying for bills and so on. So they were just kind of like a complaint division where you'd sign a petition and then they'd mail in a petition to the Congress people. And then I joined a group that Art Linkletter started called Next Generation, Next Gen, I think it was called. And I got nothing from them. And I said, what's the matter with these people? Why don't they do it? So now here I am, a retired insurance agent with a few $1,000s in a bank. I said to my wife, you know, I still want to use my brain power. I got to do something. Why don't we try to start an organization? Everybody laughed. They said, you're crazy. Well, in 2 years, we had 5,000 members, which wasn't so good. The magazine cost us a fortune. We were losing $10,000 on every edition. But finally, we started to grow, and then Armstrong, it was people like you on talk radio, Armstrong Williams, that had me on your programs, and you asked me to tell people what we're doing at AMAC, and people started joining us, and they're joining us, and they're joining us. 2 weeks ago, the influential magazine and newspaper, Roll Call, had my op-ed printed about Social Security. Just yesterday, the Hill blog, which is read by pretty much everybody up in Washington, D.C., they had another op-ed that we put together on the Social Security item and so on. So the word is getting around. We got a whole host of projects now, and thank God perhaps the good Lord has blessed us. I haven't taken a nickel from AMAC in 5 years, put most of my life savings into it, but yet every time we get a member, we buy more advertising, we get on radio shows, and it's just building and building and building.
Let me play the devil's advocate. Some people talk about Social Security. The good thing is that people don't need to understand money to benefit from it, is what some will say. Part of their paychecks goes into it. Then when they are at retirement age, they can start collecting money back from it. But what I think, though, is that for the majority of people, they'd probably be better off if they set the same amount aside that is taken in taxes, instead invested in long-term safe investments. The whole system is sort of a pyramid scheme, and challenge me on that, and depends on enough money coming in to match the amount getting paid out, and it wouldn't be a big deal, except for too many people are getting benefits of Social Security without really having paid their fair share in, and so the system was never intended to equalize wealth, and it was supposed to be a way for people earning money to set some aside and then take it back out during retirement.
Well, you're right on. I can't argue with that because, as you know, Social Security, originally when it started, it didn't have any disability. It was strictly retirement. Now 30% of the money that Social Security takes in goes out to pay disability, and the majority of those disabilities are people under age 65. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have had a disability program, but that's not what Social Security was intended to do. So you're exactly right. They started it out with a good idea, and now it's been changed. Now, Galveston, Texas, before the federal law changed, there was a time where they could opt out from Social Security. Galveston did just that, and their employees who paid into private funds get roughly 30 to 40% more income from the Galveston retirement plan than Social Security. But yet at the same time, AMAC feels we should keep basic Social Security. The only thing we've got to do is add a rider to it, which is a voluntary Social Security IRA, which will allow a worker to have anywhere between $160,000 and $350,000 extra when they do reach the entitlement age.
Give us your pros and cons on raising the Social Security retirement age.
Okay, the big pro is by raising the age for 3 years, which isn't a lot, from 62 to 65 for the minimum age, and from 66 to 69, that plus make the cost of living increase, fix it for now at 1.65%. Those simple changes would keep Social Security solvent for the next 75 years. But who it hurts is a worker, somebody who has to use physical labor, like a carpenter, plumber, electrician, a laborer, a farmer, you name it, who's got to, bend down and pick up a bag of cement or climb a ladder. When you're 63, 64, it's hard to do that. So that's not fair for those folks. So what we're saying is come out with this IRA, let the people collect the IRA money between 62 and 65 so they can retire early at the early age. And if they don't, they just have more money when they're 65. So the pro of setting back the age, it'll make it solvent. The negative is it hurts workers who want to or can't afford to keep working because of the physical condition.
What about, should Americans be able to put some of their Social Security contributions in a private account?
Well, we're not recommending privatizing Social Security at this point. If in 15 years, after our Social Security IRA is running for a 15-year period, if that is superior to basic Social Security, then we think it should be looked at. George Bush meant well when he said, let's privatize Social Security. But that upsets too many apple carts. And you should test it first. You shouldn't change a basic system that millions of people are depending on until you find out, will the new system work? So what we're doing is, it's not intended to privatize Social Security, but if it works in 15, 20 years, it could be changed. It could evolve to more of a private system. But right now, we're not advocating that.
But isn't, so I guess what you're implying in some way, I guess, is Daniel Weber, founder of AMAC, the fast-growing alternative to AARP. You're saying the proposal to change Social Security is sort of like letting the foxes into the hen house?
Not really. What we're saying is make Social Security solvent, make it sound financially, but let more money be... See, the problem with Social Security is not only the whole system's going bankrupt, but it only pays the average person only $13,000 a year when they retire. That's nothing. You can't live on that, especially in an urban area where rent is high and everything, electricity, food, everything is high. So what we're saying, you got to have more than $13,000 a year. So let a 25-year-old worker put in $5 a week or $15 a week, whatever they want to put in, and by the time they're 62, that's going to amount to a small mountain of money that they'll have in addition to basic Social Security.
How do you respond? I remember Rick Perry getting in hot water during the presidential debate when he says Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. You know, he's not the first to do so. Economists have sometimes talked in similar terms, but when economists use this language, they're usually not as serious. How do you respond to that?
Well, technically he could be correct, because a Ponzi scheme is based on the people putting money in pay the people who are collecting. And the expectation is they're all going to collect a lot more. Well, the Ponzi scheme is a lie, and they're not going to. In Social Security, like I said a couple of years ago, we actually paid out more money than we took in. Well, if that continued, yeah, you got a Ponzi scheme. But thank God, that won't be allowed to happen. If it did, if the Congress people said, hey, we're not going to do anything like they've been doing for the last 20 years, if they continue that, it could very well turn into a Ponzi scheme, and then the people, younger people, won't collect anything, much less 25% less.
How does someone join AMAC?
Well, best way, Armstrong, they go to our website, AMAC, AMAC.us, www.amac.com, .us, not .com, US for good old United States. And it's $16 a year. They get a discount for 3-year and 5-year membership. They get a magazine, but they get some great discounts on a lot of products, including shopping online.
You know what? You are really to be commended for your courage to take on this undertaking and to prove to be successful. It lets you know it's not where you are in life, it's where you decide in your mind to retire in life. And you have not decided to retire. You've decided to keep living and make life better for others by giving them alternatives to organizations like AARP and others. And you should be commended.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Coming from you, Armstrong, I really appreciate that.
Well, you know, I have tremendous respect for you, and we go back quite some time. I've always have been fascinated and concerned about this issue. And I'm just so thrilled that you're living your life dream and empowering others in the process. Because you know what? You cannot empower others without empowering yourself.
You got it.
And thank you for joining us.
Great. Have a great day.
All right, Daniel. And we want to thank you and our earlier guest, Alan Reinhardt, who talked about the school system and churches no longer being able to use school classrooms for their services in New York. Remember, you can always catch us streaming live at www.livestream.com/Armstrong Williams. That's from 4 to 5 p.m. on our WGCV 620 a.m. broadcast. 6 to 7 p.m. on WTNT, 7 to 8 p.m. live on Sirius 128. Have a wonderful what is left of your day and the day after. Stay safe, stay strong, but stand up for what you believe and be principled in that which you believe. I'm Armstrong Williams. For all of us, WGCV, the Armstrong Williams Show, and all that make it possible, have a blessed day.
Armstrong Williams on the right side. Don't curse, speak English. Virtuous society. I dare you to listen.
Hey, turn it up. Hey, get on the right side.
Elevate your mind. I'm Armstrong Williams on the right side.
Yo, man, it's your boy K.O. And you're tuned in to the most conservative of our brothers.
The Armstrong Williams Show. Please give me a break. Grow up.
The views and opinions expressed on this broadcast are not necessarily those of either